when I was 11 years old.
Yes.
And we went up there to the Vaughn place in Eugene, and I saw this Mirandy that she had 2 sets of twins, and 2 other, it seemed like she had about 6 children by my grandfather, and he'd already had 5 by my grandmother, you know.
Yes.
And anyhow, I saw her, and I saw my grandfather when I was 11 years old.
Is that the only time you seen them?
What?
Did you see him any other time?
I don't remember seeing him any other time, no. And I didn't talk to him very much because I'd heard this story about my grandmother, and I was just a child, and I was kind of resentful about him because I didn't like this Mirandy because she broke up their home, you know.
Yes.
And we didn't have any trouble with them. We stayed overnight, I think, but of course it wasn't easy in those days. That was way back in 1913 or something like that. And
yeah, now what about what do you remember about my dad?
Now about your dad?
And Uncle Earl.
Well, he was
And Uncle Earl too, because they were twins.
John Dudall.
No, that's my grandfather.
What?
You told me already about my grandfather, but my dad, Ivor.
Your dad?
Yeah, and Uncle Earl.
Well, when I went to see Aunt Dora, and I was going to college, Ivor and Earl, the 2 twins, and Ivor was your father,
Yes.
were about 2 years old, and they were very timid, and they'd hide under the dining room table when I was there. When I tried to talk to them, they'd hide. They were very timid, and she kept them so clean, and the floor was just as clean as anybody's table. But John Dudall didn't help her at all, and I never did see her go to bed. I don't think she slept at night. I don't know. I have one picture of her, if I could find it someday, when she was sitting in a chair in her living room and she went to sleep. That's the only time I have a picture of her. But I knew a little bit about this, and my mother told me when I was a child about it, and I didn't talk much about it to my mother because it was too sad for us children, you know.
Yeah. Well,
the twins, your father was one of the twins.
Yes.
Ivor. And I saw them when they were little, and then I saw them when they were older, and then when my mother died in my mother passed away in 1937, why they came over here to Estacada to see me, Ivor and Earl, and Violet and all of them, and Aunt Dora came too.
Yeah.
And they came over to see me because it was real hard for me to give up my mother. I didn't get to see her very often because I was up down here and she was up in Ontario, Oregon, and I had just seen her a little while before she passed away, and she saw Jerry, my son, once when he was 18 months old, and that's all she ever saw him. So anyhow, I saw Ivor and Earl, the twins, and Violet and Catherine. Is that your mother?
Yes, that's my mother.
I saw them.
Yes.
And I saw them, Ivor, when they were going with the twins before they got married. I saw them when they were girls, and they'd come there to visit at Aunt Dora's, and I'd be over there visiting from college where I went to Monmouth, you know.
Yes,
And so I knew them then, and, you know, just when I'd see them on weekends. And Ivor and Earl, the 2 twins, were very nice. Your father and Earl were very nice. I liked both of them, and they came to see me several times when I lived here in Estacada,
Uh-huh.
and their wives came with them. I know Catherine and Violet,
Yeah. Well,
some,
we were here in 1979 or 80, I think,
what?
we were here about 10 years ago before Dad died. I came to see you.
Well, Ivor and Earl were here then,
Yeah, yeah, we came to see you.
and the twin and their wives were here.
Yes, that's true.
Yes. I remember that. And you promised me you'd come back.
Yeah. Well, I'm here.
I'm only sorry that I'm sick and that I can't see and hear, because I could do a lot of things for you, Ivor.
Oh, don't worry about me. We're
I
okay.
don't have any money.
Oh,
I don't have anything but
I don't want any money.
I don't have anything but this old house.
Well, I like to hear the stories.
What?
I like to hear your stories, because you and Lena are the only ones that have the record.
Yeah, but I try to make it seem like home.
Yes.
And they want to put me in a rest home, Ivor, but I want to stay here as long as I can.
You look good.
Well,
You look very good and healthy.
yeah, but I'm not very young.
Uh-huh.
I can walk around, but I can't go any place by myself.
Yeah. Well, why
I
don't you...
taught school 45 years, and I have hundreds of children that used to go to me,
Uh-huh.
and they come back to see me sometime,
Uh-huh.
and that's nice too.
Yes.
And some of them have passed away before I have.
Yes, I know that.
And I've belonged to the Christian church here ever since 1926.
Uh-huh.
When I first came here, I've always tried to be a Christian person, Ivor.
Yeah.
And
Do you...
I especially loved Aunt Dora, because she was such a wonderful little person. She worked so hard and did so much for her family.
Yeah.
But John, your grandpa, I didn't think that he was as kind to her as he should have been, because she was deserving of lots of credit.
Uh-huh. Well,
When I was there, one time, I'll tell you, I had an incident. I was going to college, and he had a great big bookcase that he'd gotten someplace in the kitchen there.
yeah.
And he had it full of encyclopedias. I think, a great big set of 24 or more.
Yeah.
And he wanted to sell them. He didn't seem to use them. I didn't have much money because I was going to college, but I bought them from him because thought I could use them when I was teaching, but I didn't use them. I didn't even like them.
Yeah.
And I gave most of them away afterward. I shouldn't have taken them.
Uh-huh.
And then I didn't know John, your grandfather, very much.
Uh-huh.
He always wanted to put me on his lap and hug and kiss me and everything like that, and I was kind of scared of him.
Okay. Uh-huh.
Not that I thought he was bad or anything, but I just didn't care for him.
Uh-huh.
Because he wasn't good to Aunt Dora.
Oh, okay. You know that I went to Denmark.
What?
I went to Denmark, the country of Denmark.
What?
I traveled overseas to Denmark,
Yes.
and I found where he was born.
Did you?
I found his mother's grave.
What kind of parents did he have?
Well, it's a very long history, but I have been unable to find his father's grave.
Uh-huh.
But I found his mother's place, and I found other doodles in Denmark, and also other doodles
Was it quite a distinguished family? Or?
No, I don't think so. But he was the son of a family that had 13 children.
How many?
13. that means his father had 13. His father had 13 brothers and sisters. But I don't know which one was his father.
They had 18 children?
13.
13?
13 doodles in Denmark. That was his, that was his...
Did you see any of them?
No, I didn't see, well, they all died. This was in, he would...
John, your grandpa, died before Aunt Dora did.
Yes, he died even before I was born.
What?
He died before I was born.
Yes.
And,
Before you were born?
yes.
I think so.
He was born in 1849.
41?
49. He was
Was he?
1849 is when he was born.
Well, you see, I didn't keep track of all that,
Yeah.
but I especially loved my Aunt Dora, and I loved Lena's mother, Aunt Eva. I liked her too.
Uh-huh.
And my mother, I saw the two boys. There were two boys in that family, Richard and Will.
Uh-huh.
I think I saw Rich once and Will just once when I was a little girl. My mother took us down here to see them because we lived up in Ontario, you know.
Uh-huh.
And I saw them once when I was a child, and I don't know if any of them are living or not. They had a daughter Mabel and a daughter June, and they were my cousins. I don't know, they might be living, I don't know.
Yeah.
Lena knows more about them than I do.
Well, I'll talk with Lena on that.
Yes.
What
but
about...
I don't hear from Lena. She told me that she couldn't write because of the arthritis.
Yeah.
But I wrote to her as long as I could. I even wrote a Christmas card to her last Christmas, and you know,
Yeah.
I loved Lena. She was, and I loved her mother too.
Uh-huh.
I loved all of them, except I wasn't very fond of my grandfather after I found out what happened.
Yeah, I understand
I
that.
just saw him once, just
Yeah.
that one time when I was 11 years old, and I saw that Mirandy that had broken up their home.
Yeah.
But I really believe the story that Aunt Dara told me.
Yeah.
I believe that she was telling us the truth about it.
What about
You've
the...
heard a lot of good things about Aunt Dora, haven't you?
Oh, I hear so many good things from my mother.
And then something
from
else
Violet.
I wanted to tell you about. I don't know if anyone else has ever told you. One time we went for a little walk out in the field, and Aunt Dora said, "Elsie, I want to show you a grave." And she took me out in the field there by her place.
Yeah.
And there was a little grave there, and that was one child that she had that died, I guess, practically at birth, and her name was Hazel.
Hazel.
And she was deformed, and she didn't live. And so they buried her out there in that field. I don't know if it's still there or not.
Yeah. When was she born before Holt?
What?
Was she before Holt or Mark?
She was, she would be a little younger than Holt.
Can you tell us,
What?
can you tell me anything about Mark?
Yes,
Mark Dudall.
yes. Mark, did you hear about Mark?
I heard about Mark from Earl.
What?
I heard about that he was very sick. But you tell me.
He went to the blind school,
Yeah.
and I guess he was very despondent person. I only saw him about a couple of times.
Uh-huh.
I don't think he was home very much. He was over at that blind school. But he could see a little bit, but he was very timid.
Uh-huh.
I didn't know, and I guess he got despondent and ended his life.
That's what Earl told me.
Did they tell you?
Yeah, they told me that.
Who told you, Lena?
No, Earl.
What?
Earl. Earl told me that. Earl.
told you?
Yes.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Well,
What-
see, I was just a young girl I knew about all those things just about at the time that they could tell me. Then this Annie or Anna,
Yes.
she was the only girl that Dora had that lived, and she didn't know what to do with herself, and she didn't help her mother very much. She wasn't too ambitious,
Uh-huh.
and I think she went to that school too, but she didn't really need to.
Yes.
She could see pretty good, but she did have trouble with her eyes.
Yes.
So she wanted to go with me when I taught school. I didn't know what I'd do with her because she didn't work, but I took her with me about 2 years, and she spent a lot of money, and she was hard to get along with. She was different than Aunt Dora. She was not very pleasant to be with.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And I did the best I could with her, and Aunt Dora used to worry because I helped her a lot, but I told Aunt Dora that I wanted to do it for her.
Yeah.
I gave her piano lessons, and I had her in one of my 8th grades and taught her to write and taught her to do quite a few things.
Uh-huh.
And then finally, one day I got this school out here, and I was going to stay with a lady by the name of Nellie Curran. And I told her I had a cousin that I had to bring with me and have to stay board there too.
Yes.
She wanted to know, this Mrs. Curran wanted to know what this girl did, and I said, she doesn't do anything, she just stays with me.
Uh-huh.
And so she said, well, that's out.
Uh-huh.
I won't have her here.
Yeah.
So I didn't know what to do with Anna. I felt sorry for her, and she was staying in there in Portland in a little room there, and I was paying for a room and board, and I was out here teaching, so I didn't know what to do. So I applied for a job, and I got her a job at a little rest home in Oregon City. I don't remember if it was a children's rest home or I can't remember, but I got her a job there. And then eventually she met her husband, who was old enough to be her father, and she married him, and that was the end of me taking care of her.
Yeah.
But I know Aunt Dora appreciated it, but she worried because I did it.
Yes.
And my mother didn't like this girl because she was lazy, you know,
Uh-huh.
and she thought that she was taking advantage of me. But for all my life, I've liked to do kind things for people, and I don't charge them, and I still like to.
Yeah.
I just love to be good to people. I don't know why, but it
Yeah.
makes me happy.
Yeah.
I don't have much to make me happy now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, we're glad to be with you now.
What?
We're very glad to be with you.
Yes, well, I've enjoyed all your letters and everything, and I send them to my son, and he reads them too.
Uh-huh.
I'd like for you to meet my son, but he forgive him.
Yeah. You know, Mr. Grant Kerber. Grant?
Grant Kerber
Yeah.
was my sister Eva. Son. See, she had a daughter and a son, and the daughter lives in Salem, and he's a professor in the Willamette University.
Uh-huh.
And this is Patty. Pat's her name. That was Eva's daughter, and her husband's there. And then Grant, his wife's name's Myra, and they did live in Eva's place after Eva died, and then they moved back to Florida. Are they very far from you?
Yeah, they live in Tallahassee, and I've talked to him twice on the telephone.
How far are you apart?
Oh, it's several hours, but we're going to meet each other soon.
Have you met him?
Not yet, but we're going to make sure we meet
He was
him.
in the Air Force, and he finished you know, he finished his term in the Air Force. He retired from that.
Yes.
And they lived in Eva's place a little while because Eva and her husband both died within a year apart with heart trouble, and the place was left to them.
Is Eva
It's
your...
a real lovely little place up Gold Beach, Oregon.
Uh-huh.
I've been down there lots of times.
Yeah.
My sister Eva and I were just 3 years, not quite 3 years apart in age, and
Uh-huh.
I used to go down there, and all of us girls, there were 4 girls in our family, we were all teachers, but I taught the longest, I guess,
Uh-huh.
because I had to. No, I just loved to, Ivor.
Yes.
I just loved children, but my husband didn't want any, and I did get to have Jerry, and I'm real proud of him.
Good.
But Patty will come to see me when she can, but she don't come very often. Now, Pat, that's Eva's daughter,
Yes.
and Grant is Eva's son. But Grant is
So
a
Grant,
little older than my son.
yeah, Grant and Patty are sister and brother.
What?
Grant and Patty are sister and brother.
Yes.
Is that true?
Yet Grant and Pat are Eva's
Children.
2 children.
Okay.
Yes. And their father's name was Homer Kerber, but he died suddenly with a heart attack too.
Yeah. Well,
Well, Eva was sick for a while, and she was in a rest home down there in southern Oregon, but she was sick for a couple of years.
uh-huh.
But you would have liked to talk to Eva, and she was trying to get this history together too, just like I am.
Yeah.
And then my older sister Nellie, she was 10 years older than I am. She died a few years ago, and
Yeah.
her daughter Jean lives in Portland. I was going to have her come out if I'd have known when you were coming.
Uh-huh. Well, that's okay.
But she doesn't know too much. I guess I'm the only one that knows all this because I went to visit Aunt Dora. See?
Yeah.
That's how I got to know her.
Yeah. Well, I have a lot of the history of the family, and I have a lot of photographs.
Now, is there any questions that you want to ask me?
Well, the only question I might ask you now is, how about your grandmother or grandfather on your grandmother's side, on your grandmother's side, Baber,
What?
the Angeline
Beaver?
Baber? Yes. Can you remember anything about that?
Well, see, my grandmother, before she married my grandfather, her name was Angelina Baber.
Yes.
And the grandmother Baber was living when my mother was a little girl. She remembered her, and I guess the father had passed away, but she used to come and visit. And she'd stay a month one place and then another month someplace else like they did in the olden days
Uh-huh.
after her husband died. And the Babers were the one that my grandfather stopped after this accident, and my grandmother was killed. He stopped on the way with his wagon and horses at the Babers, and one of them, I don't remember which one it was, came with him and held my grandmother's head,
Uh-huh.
you know, until they got home.
Yeah.
That's all I know about that, but the Babers were my grandmother's parents.
Yes.
And I don't know too much about them because my mother told me lots of things about them, but see, she was only 8 years old,
Uh-huh.
and Aunt Dora was very resentful against my grandfather because this happened. And I
Yeah.
don't blame her.
Oh, I don't either. I know. I understand that. Yeah.
What?
I understand that. Yes.
Yeah, but I don't blame her
Uh-huh.
because it was her mother, and she knows that this accident was planned.
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
And that was, in those days, I don't know what they would have done if they had found it out, but I think it was terrible. I
Yeah.
don't even like to think about it.
Well, I won't bother you about it anymore, but
Yes.
I'm very interested in the history.
Are you going to write a history?
Yes, I'm writing a history,
Well,
and so I want to have everything.
if you put anything in about the Vaughn family, I'd like to have my sisters and their family put in it because it wasn't put in that book over there.
Yeah, I know that.
Eva was trying to find out if her husband family came across the plains at the same time,
Yeah,
and then she got sick, and then she didn't get to finish it, and then this Lewis Vaughn that wrote the book didn't get the names of our family.
yeah.
They got my mother and father, and that's all.
He contacted me in Nova Scotia.
What?
Louis Vaughn.
Yes.
Uh,
Have
con-
you seen him?
no, but I've talked to him on the telephone years ago,
Did you?
and
Is he still alive?
I don't know.
What?
I don't know.
Uh-huh.
But I helped him on the Doodall side.
Uh-huh.
I gave him the names of even my own children are in the book. But anyway, I'm going to let you rest now. I think you need a rest. You had a long story to tell,
Uh-huh.
and I'm thankful. I'll make a copy of this tape. I'll send it to Mr. Kerber, Grant Kerber.
Well, I don't know how much longer I'm going to live, but I know that it's real hard for me, Ivor, to try to get along here and when I can't see and everything, when I'm living here alone.
Uh-huh.
But I have to have people help me, but that isn't like a happy life, you know.
I know that, yes.
No.
Uh-huh.
I don't have much money or anything, but I do have lots of friends, but they're busy. They don't come to see me.
Yeah.
And
Uh-huh.
my son was going to come next weekend, but you'll be gone.
Yeah. Well, I may see him in the future.
What?
I may see him in the future.
Well, he's up there by Seattle, but you won't be going up there, will you?
No.
You won't.
No.
When did you come?
I came last Tuesday,
Uh-huh,
a week ago,
uh-huh.
and then I went to see my family.
Well, I will remember when Violet and Catherine were girls, and they were going with your father and Earl.
Uh-huh.
I will remember when they were there at Aunt Dora's and the girls had come there. And poor little Aunt Dora was so good to everybody. She'd fix a nice dinner. She was a wonderful cook.
Uh-huh.
I
Yeah.
remember one time, Ivor, this is just a little incident, but Aunt Dora never did sit down with us to eat. She always served everything, and she was so wonderful to everybody. And yet she couldn't see very well or
Yeah.
anything. But she made some homemade bread, and our family was here. That was a Poole family, you
Yes.
know, and they were there. And so that bread looked so good, and so when they passed it around, I remember when I was a little girl, I said, "Oh, that bread looks so good, I think I'll take 2 pieces."
Yeah.
And I took 2 pieces, and my mother slapped me in the face.
Uh,
And I'll never forget that. That's the only time she ever did it. But it frightened me, and it made me feel bad. And Dora said, "Don't worry, Elsie, that's all right." But I was sorry I did that, but it just looked so good.
uh-huh.
Aunt Dora was a wonderful cook,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
and my mother wanted us to be polite.
Uh-huh.
I tried to be, but I liked her bread.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to shut this recorder off, and then we can talk.
I won't ever forget Aunt Dora and all the kind things she, did for other people.
Uh-huh. That's good. Okay.
She didn't have a washing machine. She had not an automatic. She had just a one that you push back and forth.
Yeah.
And I can still remember when she was out there pumping water and
Oh.
washing clothes, and she was so clean.
Uh-huh.
She was so clean and kept her house so nice.
You know that I've seen her house. The house is still standing.
Did somebody live there?
Yes, it still looks
You
the.
been there?
Yes, I was in it last year.
They fixed it over.
They fixed it over, but Violet was in it, and she said it
was
looks.
an old house.
It's an old house, but I think I'm going to go try to find that grave of Hazel.
It was a nice location.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Oh.
Oh, when they were little children, little twins, they were real cute, and I loved children. So I used to go see them when I went to college different times.
Yeah.
And I'd go see them as they grew up. So I saw Ivor and Earl when they were little, and then I saw them when they were in grade school, and then I saw them after they were growing and after they were married.
Yeah.
Because I went down there to Monmouth to college, and then I also used to go visit Aunt Dora.
Yes. Yeah.
And Aunt Eva. And I loved it. Lena's mother, too. I loved her. She was a real wonderful little person, too.
Uh-huh.
And I think a lot of Lena yet, but I don't know why she said she couldn't write to me on account of the arthritis.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the reason.
But I have some of her letters yet that we used to write back and forth.
Uh-huh.
But you and Mary give her my love, will you?
Oh, sure will. We sure will.
I
Okay.
think a lot of her. Overheard a lot of this, you know.
Uh-huh.
But my grandmother wasn't very happy. I think she did know a little bit about, about the Smarandi and my grandfather keeping company together, because she said to my mother one day, my mother was making the bed, and my grandmother was making the bed, and my mother was just a little girl, and she said, well, let me show you how to make it. She said, I can see and you can't. And then she felt real bad to think she said that.
Yeah.
And then she said that her mother cried, and her mother said, well, I'm not very happy because I can't see. And she remembered that, my mother did, and she always felt bad about it. But anyhow, soon after my grandma died, then the Smirt and Mac were born, and then later they had another set of twins, Lita and Pete,
Uh-huh.
Vaughn.